Hello, hope everyone's doing good today. Today I wanted to talk about conditional intensity because this is going to be the new system that the Storm Prediction Center will be using this spring. Um, I've been using it for Facebook posts and I've used it on my YouTube channel. And I just thought I would talk about this new conditional intensity because it's going to really change how the outlooks are. It's going to be a different system. And I want to explain it a little more in this video, so you can kind of understand the system. It's going to be a little hard to understand, but I do think it's going to be a good implementation based on some of the stuff that they're going to implement. So, what are convective outlooks? This is what I use. I show it off Facebook. I've shown it on YouTube to show basically the threat of severe weather. It's basically to measure coverage and some severity. The issue with the convective outlooks is that coverage is greater than intensity for the most part. Other than the significant, which we'll talk a little bit more later, the black hatched area, that's the only thing that shows intensity. Rather than that, it's mainly based on coverage. Here's an example of a convective outlook. Here on this image, this is one of the ones that I have remembered a lot because this is the last moderate risk that I have been in. May 28th, 2019. This is what we call the categorical outlook, but this is what a convective outlook is. There's four different parts to it: a categorical outlook, a tornado outlook, a wind outlook, and a hail outlook. And we're currently here on the side looking at the categorical outlook. These are created by the National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center. They issue these during the spring, and they're going to be making a new update to these, and I'm going to talk a little more about them in this video. So here's a look at the different probabilities. There's the categorical outlook, there's the tornado outlook, there's the wind outlook, there's the hail outlook. I want to give you a look of what it looks like, what we've been using over the last couple years since the addition of marginal and enhanced risks, because those were added back in a couple years ago. I don't remember the exact year, but it was a couple years ago, and now they're going to be changing them again. The categories are going to stay the same. However, it's going to be different, which I'll explain here later. So I want to note here that probabilities, tornado probabilities, wind probabilities, hail probabilities, I don't know if anyone knew this before in my videos, but it means 25 miles of a given point. So if you have a 2% chance of tornadoes, you have a 2% chance of tornadoes in 25 miles of a given point. So if you have a 2% chance of tornadoes, it means anywhere in this region here, and I probably should change my pen color, anywhere in this region from here in Kansas City, Olathe, all the way up near Lawson about, anywhere in there has a 2% chance of tornadoes if there was a 2%. Or if there was a 30% tornadoes. There's a 30% chance 25 miles of any given point. And this is an example of me showing it here on the side off of radar scope. So that's what it basically means, those probabilities. They're within 25 miles of a given point. Not your exact location, but maybe your location, but within that 25 miles of your location. Not just your location. It means 25 miles, so it may not hit your location, but maybe 25 miles within your area. So, just wanted to clarify that in case you ever wonder here in the future about that. This is our current our categories for convective outlooks. We have our level 1, our marginal risk, and again, these are going to stay the same. Marginal risk, it means it's isolated severe weather. It's usually strong. Thunderstorms is usually what I refer to it as. Sometimes can include very isolated severe storms, but usually it's not that bad and usually doesn't warrant a watch. Then we have level 2, the slight risk, which usually is a little more scattered, strong to severe thunderstorms. You see a couple more severe thunderstorm warnings, and you can see a watch out of that. And then level 3 through 5, usually you see a watch, because usually there's a pretty good chance of severe weather, with sometimes some being intense severe weather, especially level 4 and 5, moderate and high risk, which are pretty rare and are not issued that often, especially the high risk. They do not issue that very often, only once or twice maybe in a year they issue it, and it's usually somewhere in Tornado Alley or somewhere in Dixie Alley, but it can be issued anywhere, but it's not issued that often, and they try to minimize the high risk so it's not used for a event that doesn't need a high risk. But some things to clarify over here are severe storms. Severe storms mean 58-mile-per-hour winds or more, an inch in hail in diameter or more, or a tornado is defined as a severe thunderstorm. The significant severe, which we'll talk a little more about in the next slide, is that hatched region you see on the outlooks. Basically means 75-mile-per-hour wind gusts or possibly more, at least 2-inch in diameter of hail, and tornadoes of at least EF2 rating. And it doesn't have to be all three of these, it can just be one of them to be considered significant severe. So, just to clarify, it doesn't have to be all of those. It only has to be one of those to be considered significant severe, and you get that hatched risk if so. So, our hatched risk here basically means right now in our current system means there's a 10% or greater of significant severe weather. It could be the 2-inch in diameter hail, 70-mile-per-hour winds, or EF2 or greater. And that's what's demonstrated on the outlooks, hail, wind, and tornado. That little blacked region on there is what represents that significant risk. So if you have the hail outlook, there's a little black hatched on it. That means that significant hail is possible, a 10% chance within your area. We're only going to see this outlook for a couple more days, not very much more. But this is what creates some of that intensity. A little bit of that intensity rather than coverage. A lot of it is based on coverage, which I want to talk about in the next slide. Our coverage. This is our scale currently of the current system for the next couple days, and basically it's mostly based on coverage. There is a little bit of significant severe means that hatched region I was just talking about, and those are 10% or greater. You'll see that significant happen, but overall mainly it's based on coverage. If you see a 60% chance of tornadoes, you are in a high risk of severe weather. Just a 60% chance of tornadoes. So if they were like EF1s or EF0s, you had a high risk of severe weather. And does that really warrant a high risk? Maybe, maybe not. It's not issued that often, really. But is it really worth that high risk if there's just EF1s or EF0s being issued? So that's kind of the issue with this current system. You can have a 45% chance of tornadoes, but it might not be that intense. And there's one way to show it with that hatched area, but that's the only way we're able to show intensity. It doesn't really show it that well. It only tells you a 10% chance of significant severe weather being possible. So we also have that with wind and hail, but it's mainly, as you can see here, more based on coverage rather than intensity. It's more based on coverage. So that's why we are going to be going over to conditional intensity. Here's another look at our different areas, just to kind of show you some of the stuff I was just telling you about. The hatched area, and that's more based on coverage. You can only see there's only one hatched area. That tells you significant severe weather being possible, and it doesn't really tell you that much. It kind of does. It tells you that it could be significant tornadoes, could be significant wind, could be significant hail, but it doesn't really tell you that much. where this new system is going to kind of show you, show where the most significant area is for either tornadoes, winds, hail, any of that. It will be able to show. So this is the current system. Now we're going to talk about the new system. So the new system is going to add intensity to it. So now we will be able to have both coverage and intensity in our outlooks. Again, the old system, more based on coverage, a little bit of intensity by that hatched region. And with the new system, they pretty much got rid of that hatched area, but implemented 3 new hatched areas. They're called SIG 1, SIG 2, and SIG 3. Really, you just got to think of this as if you have a higher SIG, basically the more intense the storms are going to be. This is our way of showing intensity in this conditional intensity. It's to show the intensity. This is level 1, this is level 2, this is level 3. This is going to be the rare one that you will not see very often unless you're going to see some very bad storms. But again, this is going to equal out both intensity and coverage. We're going to see it kind of equal out here, which I'll show you our scale here. So here it is. This is the new scale of how it's going to work. They broke it down into the tornado, wind, and hail categories. The other one was had them all combined in one chart. This one, they have them all separated because they are breaking it up into coverage on this side over here. This is all based on coverage, which we've seen in our outlooks before, but this is where it's new. There is now going to be intensity added to these outlooks. So if you have less than SIG 1, that means that there's no hatched area, not a big intensity, mainly weak, large hail, damaging winds, tornadoes, very, very weak, but you have maybe a good chance of that. So you may have a really good chance of tornadoes here one day, but you may not have very much intensity. That would be considered an enhanced risk of severe weather. You may see a decent chance of seeing intensity in storms, but not very much coverage. Well, that's considered enhanced risk on this new scale. So it kind of balances out that coverage and intensity, as you can see here, on these new outlooks. So we have both represented in the outlooks. Again, before it was more represented by the coverage. Now we're adding intensity onto here. So if you have like a 30% chance of tornadoes and you have significant 2, that means that, or SIG 2, that means that you have a pretty good chance of seeing tornadoes and you have a decent amount of instability, which would warrant a high risk of severe weather, which is rare, of severe weather happening. So the high risk are going to be the same. They're going to be just like a high risk in 2024 or 2025. It's going to be like a high risk then, but it's going to be different the way that we're going to be issuing the high risk. Something also worth noting is the wind probability now goes up to 90%. So you know how we have windstorms, derechos across the Midwest. Sometimes here in Kansas City we do see derechos here. And sometimes we can better do probabilities on those, especially if you know a derecho is coming. We see it forming. We can now issue higher probabilities for that. And they have also brought in, they did have a high risk for wind, but they usually never issued it back in their old system. But they now have a high risk for wind, mainly for the higher up probabilities and higher intensity. So if you have a 90% chance of seeing damaging winds, you're still in enhanced risk, which is a 3 out of 5 on our scale. So you may have a really good chance of seeing severe winds, but it may not be very intense, which puts you in an enhanced risk. Where instead, if you're in SIG 3, that means you're going to see some significant winds, probably in excess of 100 miles per hour, and a lot of coverage, which this would very rarely be issued. I don't know if we'll ever see that in our lifetime, to be honest with you. But it's a possibility. This is just to show the chart. We also have hail. This stays mainly the same, like talking about the categories, because there's no high risk in here. Because there is no high risk for hail, because it doesn't cause as many, I don't know how to say this, impacts, I guess. It doesn't cause as many impacts as tornadoes or wind, because tornadoes, they cause a lot of damage. Winds, because it's so widespread, it can cause a lot of damage, especially 100 miles per hour wind. That's kind of like a hurricane making landfall on the coast, having 100 mile per hour winds. So that's why the wind and tornadoes have a high risk issued for them. Whereas hail doesn't, because it's not as big of an issue. It can cause lots of damage and can also hurt people, but it's not a very big issue, not something that they feel like a high risk should be issued for. A high risk is very serious, and they only want to issue it for anything significant. So that's why we don't have a high risk for hail. But you see it can go up to 60%, just like how it was. The only addition is, again, the intensity, SIG 1 to SIG 2. Moderate risk is as high as you can go for hail. Hail can be very destructive, but it doesn't cause as many issues as tornadoes and wind do. So this is why they don't have a high risk or anything issued for it. And then you have your day 3 outlook, which we're not going to really cover that much. So here is what our outlooks are going to look like now. This begins next week. This is what it will look like. You can see they changed the map. A lot cleaner of a map, in my opinion. Looks a lot better to me. They also do not have any more arrows on their outlooks. That's something else that's very notable about this. And then also they have kind of a new key, because the other one, to me, it was outdated. And I really like this new key that they're going to have here, especially for the tornado, wind, and hail outlooks. They're going to have a scale of this is your coverage, and then this is your intensity here. I really like that, because it kind of shows your intensity and then your coverage on there. Then you can see it used in action for a high risk that was issued one day down the south. And you can see that coverage going all the way up to pink to a 30% chance of tornadoes. And then you see those hatched areas, level 1, and then we see level 2, and then you can see level 3 right here in the middle, showing that level 3 meaning a very, very significant tornadoes, probably EF4s, EF5s occurring in that area, or the threat of that at least, with a pretty good chance of tornadoes in coverage too. And then we have down here, we have the wind, down here in the bottom left with SIG 1, meaning a little bit of intense winds, probably up to 75 miles per hour, maybe. And then we have our hail, which has a little bit of significance as well, with probably maybe up to 2 inches in diameter. I haven't really studied too much about the significance, what SIG 1 will be, because I know our hatched area used to be 2-inch in diameter hail and 75 mile per hour winds. I'm not sure about SIG 1, SIG 2, or SIG 3, other than I know that SIG 3 will be much more significant than SIG 1 or 2. Here's another sample of, to kind of show that severe or intensity over coverage. As you can see, this is a tornado outlook with a 2% and a 5% chance of tornadoes. And it shows are significant in there, which before was a 10% chance or greater of significant tornadoes, EF2s or more. And they couldn't issue it for 2 or 5% risk of tornadoes. So really, you wouldn't know if it would be a chance of significant tornadoes if there was a 2% or 5%, because you could have a much better chance of seeing significant tornadoes, but not have as much coverage. So this is again where this new system is going to help out. We have here a 5% chance of tornadoes, maybe not a big chance of tornadoes, but we also have Sig 1, meaning that if there is a tornado that does form, it could be very significant with the environment that it's in. So that's basically what this is supposed to do. It's supposed to help balance out the intensity and the coverage into our convective outlooks. It's basically the main objective of this new system. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I tried to explain it the best way I could. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Again, this will be implemented next week. So, a few more days of those outlooks that I showed you earlier in the video. These will be implemented next week, and I believe it's going to be on Tuesday, but I may be wrong about that. It's going to be sometime next week, though, I know for sure. Alright, have a good night, everybody.